You're listening to the Bon Ray Show. It's 8 in the evening. Tune in every night at 8 to listen to the Bon Ray Show on Irish News Radio or itv.ie. And you can contact anything that you've heard or if anything you'd like to discuss at news@irishnews.
The Bon Ray Show on itv.ie and Irish News Radio. Today is Sunday, so as I've said before, do something with your family. Make this a family day because the government is on this leftist agenda to break down everything that is norm. So, always do the opposite what your enemy wants you to do. So we're going to talk about a little bit about Brexit and the positive thing and how the British are feeling, and not the fear tactics and the bullshit the Irish government and media are going on. So Bristol Port says 65% of imports are non-EU. They've just put in a 70 million investment to handle redirected traffic. So they're redirecting it from the EU. Media is too busy with fear tactics to report the truth of confidence. They are absolutely so confident about leaving the EU and how their businesses will grow and prosper. A container trawler for retail, we handle over 100 containers a week from non-EU countries and 2 from the EU. The increased workload ahead is 68% increase. They look forward to leaving the EU as they have gained 38% increase from non-EU countries. So they're growing from strength to strength. And all across the UK are feeling very confident in this move. You would never know it with the Irish media because they are constantly fear tactic. Simon Covey and Leo are really attacking the British, and it's quite worrying for our trade. It won't be because the British left. The British are an independent country, and we can talk about that till the cows come home. That was their decision to leave, and they are leaving. And the more likely it looks like they're leaving without a deal. But meanwhile, the Irish government is chipping huge chunks out of a future trade deal with United Kingdom by their stupidity. Firstly, they've gone to America, Canada, trying to force them to help them make England have a backstop so that they would have this sort of open border. Now, they don't need to. So this is complete lying, barefaced lying. Now, they're saying that it's for peace, as I've said before, and I've said it again, and the English have now copped on. They don't even need to be held on a barrel. There is an agreement from 1922, an agreement from 1949 that way predates the EU and way even predates the EEC, that there will be freedom of traffic between the United Kingdom and Ireland. So why does the Irish really want to push this? They really want to push this, the Irish government, is to try, they think, even at this late hour, to break Brexit, and they want non-Irish immigrants being able to flood to the United Kingdom. Now, the United Kingdom, this is the reason why they voted out. They don't want a free flow of all into their country. They've had enough of that. And that is why they voted out. But the Irish government thinks that they should be able to force this on them. As for the Irish are treated differently, and they are not. Since 1949, anybody look up that agreement, says that Ireland will not be treated as a foreign country. So it doesn't affect the Irish in any way. This fear tactics that the government are doing is just going to stop trade. The British will not trade with the Irish if they keep this chipping up. The government needs to step down and stop the bullshit and the fear tactics. The English are really looking forward to leaving. And yeah, it'll affect the rest of the Europe that are in the EU. So that's their decision to step out. Already, Italy is in a big recession and it's heading to collapse, and it may bring down the banking crisis, the banks again. And this is thanks to the EU, not the help of the EU, because the EU wasn't right for a lot of small countries. It just, particularly Ireland, Greece, Spain, the EU was because the different currencies just weren't able to be brought together because you had different levels of industrial different levels. There's just too much to put it into one currency. It didn't work. So anyway, and it isn't working. So, but Italy looks to head to a huge, serious recession coming up, and the banks of Europe will collapse. And when on top of that, with England leaving without a deal, and I think it's more and more likely that they'll leave without a deal because of the way the British are so angry at the bullying tactics that have been gone on and the fear tactics. I think they would have done the honourable thing because the British are quite honourable and paid a certain amount, not the amount of ridiculous money, and now being threatened to be sued. This is absolutely a disgrace the way the British were treated, and for that reason alone I think they will leave without a deal, because it was a ridiculous amount of money and then threatening to sue them if they didn't pay. But you know, the good thing is Britain is really looking forward to leaving, and they're quite excited about their new future. And if people don't like it, we'll leave the EU. We all should be leaving. We all should be independent. And we all should have a right to be independent and sovereign country, not under this ridiculous EU Nazi regime, which is undemocratic anyway. And none of those people are being voted in. So, you know, all the Irish government is succeeding in doing, and I've been saying it for months now, is breaking down the relationship, and that will affect the trade. And going to the America and Canadians to look for a backstop or to stop a hard border. The British aren't putting in a hard border. It's the EU who's putting in the hard border. It's not the British who want that. It is the EU. So why don't they go to the EU and say we don't want a hard border? They're going to the wrong people, and I'm purposely blurring the lines as if it's the UK who's putting the hard border in. It is the EU. The British aren't putting the hard border in. It is the EU. So instead of the Irish government going over it with their fear tactics and smoke signals and whatever they're bloody doing, it isn't the English. The British aren't doing it. It's the EU. So why don't they get on the plane and sit down with Juncker, the drunk, and Myrtle feckin', who's destroyed the whole of Europe because of her bullshit refugee crisis, was a raping, killing campaign that she brought into Europe. And that is why the English and many other countries are unhappy in the EU. Because the project has turned to shit because of these people in it running it. So anyway, the Irish government need to head over there, but because they're EU puppets, they're not doing this in Irish interest. They know perfectly well it's not the British who ever were going to put in the border, but it was going to be the EU and the EU army. So they won't face the EU and say, listen, we don't want a backstop. We don't want a hard border. But they won't do that. They'll just try and chip. And the British aren't stupid. They know exactly what the Irish government is doing, no matter how much they try to muddy the waters. It's pretty obvious for even people who know nothing about politics. It's not the British who are putting in the border. It's the EU. So you're going to the wrong people, going all the way to America to try and stir up shit. I'd say Donald Trump was for Brexit anyway, so I think you're stirring the shit up, maybe Canada. But the fact is, when it comes to the end, trade is trade. The Canadians will trade with the UK. And that idiot with his socks in Canada, like our idiot, he only has another year, 2 years. And then they will replace him. And they've had enough of him. So that stage, the British will have trade anyway. So it's time for Irish people to wake up and see the lies the Irish government are constantly telling them. It's not the UK who is putting in the hard border. It is the EU. And it'll be the EU army. And if war breaks out or trouble breaks out in Northern Ireland again, it's not this time, not because of the British, but because of the EU. Everybody think about this. Who's putting the border in? Who put the army in? The EU, not the British. So that is where our problems is. And that is where they should be demonstrating on to stop a hard border from the EU. All right. Thank you very much for listening again on the Bonnery Show, and enjoy your Sunday. There is positive things. This Brexit is looks like it could crash the EU, and fantastic, good riddance to the EU, and taking people's countries and sovereignty away and enslaving people. Thank good God, good riddance to bad crap that has come out of it. The EEC was the baby of this, but this EU is a dangerous organisation. And it really is just getting worse, and dictatorship and complete control of our thoughts and our views and our words. And even to when the EU, they got countries like our horrible government to sign the UN Pact, which is complete genocide. No other generation has signed away the rights of their future children, their futures of their children, their security of their homeland, their identity, their culture, their ancestry, and everything to do with the past and the future to be signed off. No other generation have done this. It is absolutely sickening to my stomach. This government, this media, and the banks are absolutely, it is something like Satan that is come along from Ireland. And it's shocking the Irish people are paying this horrific price for being in this union that they tried to sign out of and were made sign into twice. And who knows whether it was really in, because everything's rigged and the elections are all rigged. So while we have this fake government and nobody even awake, they actually believe the media. Shocking. But enjoy your Sunday and have a look through to the English and see what the English are saying. They're very positive about leaving, and it's like different people are building on to what their companies, not going back. So thank you for listening on the Bonry Show. Share this and share others who are telling the truth, and find out for yourself. Stop listening to RTE crap. It's just propaganda bullshit crap from our government. They're like paid from the EU to destroy us. Thank you again for listening on the Bonry Show.
You are listening to Irish News Radio at irishnews.net. Email news@irishnews.net.